It's the best and worst of the decade with Ron and Fez. The News Edition.
Hey everybody, it's Ron and Fez. Happy holidays. Happy 2009. And we're doing the decade, Fezzy.
It is the decade of the 2000s. That's what I call it.
And yet, I just found this out. We're wrong to be doing this because 2010 is part of this decade, not the next one. So this show has been done a year premature.
But I've heard people say that, and I don't buy into that. Because I heard someone say, well, technically, like, the 90s didn't start until 1991. So
right.
we're going to say that the last year of the 80s was 1990?
Well, remember we went through this at the Millennium after we brought in the Millennium?
Oh, yeah.
They really said the Millennium starts in 2001?
Yeah.
It's technically, but come on.
But it sounds crazy to say something like, back in the 80s, I think it was around 1990, this happened.
No, you got a good point there.
That sounds insane.
I can't fight that point. This decade work is annoying.
Okay, so Empire Strikes Back is one of the best science fiction movies of the 70s. Face. Because it came out in 1980.
Oh, I didn't realize.
But I'm going to say it's one of the best movies of the 70s.
I don't even think it's one of the best movies.
I could have picked Raging Bull. I could have chosen a different 1980 movie.
Doesn't it feel like... Don't both those feelings feel like a 70 movie and not an 80 movie, though?
Raging Bull feels 70s.
And you don't consider Star Wars?
Empire does feel 80s to me.
It's sad. You took it from the great generation and put it in the lousy one. What are we doing today? First of all, we've done movies.
Yeah.
Favorite day. Then TV. Music. Favorite. And then what else did we do?
We did sports.
Sports.
And then we've done technology.
Technology. By the way, we recorded these sports before we found out other people agreed with us. Major magazines. Tiger Woods been getting the Sportsman of the Decade.
Oh, and not Roger Federer.
No.
He won
actually
three more than...
I've even seen someone go for one of the girls.
Williams' sister?
And I don't know which is which.
Probably Serena. I think she has more titles.
She's younger.
I don't know. The one, I guess, that yelled and canceled on her show because
Serena.
All hell broke loose.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Serena, all right.
Who is it?
She's got attitude.
Serena.
So what are we doing today, Fezzy girl?
Today is news of the decade. Mm-hmm. News items and the biggest stories and news makers of the 2000s.
Now, would you have considered Y2K one of the big stories of this decade, or is that a 1990s story? Because as soon as this decade started, we found out Y2K was bullshit.
To me, it feels like it's this decade, that it's 2000s. That it was like the kickoff.
Even though the first day or the first second of 2000, we found out it wasn't real.
But to me, it's kind of like the first baby born on a new year. It was the first news story born in the year 2000.
But it wasn't. It came from the 90s. Everybody talked about it, wrote about it, worried about it in the 90s, and then by the time they even started doing the stuff around the world, remember, like, when you can watch ABC and they'll show you, all right, Tokyo's celebrating, and they would all go, all right, nothing shut down here. Let's go on. Moscow, nothing. Right. Rome, nothing. Paris. So by the time it got here that night, we knew nothing was going to go off on us.
Yeah. But it did take till the 2000s in order for us to know that nothing would happen.
All right, before we even get in, because I think we have probably, without even starting this, a definitive big story. Let's just kick out some of the ones that could be up there. For me, one of the things that you never heard in any other decades is the consummate animal flus that we were threatened with in this decade. The pig... chicken,
cow,
bear,
SARS,
cow, you name it. We came up. And again, like Y2K, it was the stuff that really didn't happen so big, but the fear was there. And a big part of any news story is fear. Did any of you guys get caught up in any of the animal flus?
I was caught up in the bird flu, I think.
Bird flu?
I remember going through a lot of Purell, and I'm not a Purell guy.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't before, and I haven't been since, because I was like, if the bird flu isn't going to kill me, nothing will.
Mad cow disease bothered me a lot. My parents had a neighbor that died from it.
Really?
Yeah, they had been overseas for some time and came home. They thought it was some sort of dementia, and it was later diagnosed as mad cow.
So that started to scare you?
Yeah.
Did you stay away from hamburgers and steaks?
No, I don't think I stayed away.
So this will help you, because I saw one of the documentaries this year called Food Inc. to let you know that a hamburger comes from the meat of at least 1,000 different cows. They scrunch those things up so bad that if you get one bad cow, it could affect all different amounts of meat that's going out there. It wouldn't be like a bad batch of steaks left or a bad batch. Well, at least with hamburger, just like, oh, those hamburgers are bad. It came from that mad cow. No, it'll be all over the place.
That's scary.
Just a gross Play-Doh fun factory pushing out the meat of 1,000 cows.
And remember the E. coli stuff with all the fast food, Taco Bell specifically. Remember in the lettuce? That was a big story.
The lettuce, the spinach that went out for a while.
That was a huge story.
So tainted food.
Yep.
Tainted food was big.
Even beyond or about the same as the other diseases.
Right.
What are some of the other big news stories of this decade?
Well, I mean, how about like the Mars Rover? Like we kind of forget because it was a few years ago, but at the time it was a pretty huge, space exploration story.
See, I remember the first one from the 90s, and it seems like we even got better footage from that one.
Oh yeah, I think that was Viking.
Mm-hmm. And
this one was cool though because it uncovered ice on Mars, and they just weren't sure about that.
Yeah, but now we got ice on the moon. We got ice everywhere.
But it felt like we had finally kind of gone to a Star Wars type place because it was such a cute little, R2-D2 type deal, and we could get these amazing pictures where it felt like we were on Mars.
Well, and then there was the fear, or the hype at least, that came into that story. Remember they saw that rock formation that looked like a hooded man walking across the Martian landscape?
Yeah, I remember that. Somebody gets their news from Drudge. Because Drudge was all over that.
It looked like one of the Sand People from Star Wars.
That would have been awesome. Sand People.
Let me ask you guys this. And this might be solved more for the Scandal Day, but I don't think we've had anything big enough. We had the O.J. trial in the 90s. Did anything come even remotely close in a trial of this decade in the zeros?
I mean, I guess, Kobe was very big, but it was way too short.
Didn't go to trial.
Wasn't really a real fun trial like the O.J.
No, it wasn't. Phil Spector was kind of big, but that went away.
It was about the biggest, and it lasted a long time. I think he was just too old and too weird for people to care about.
Right. I think maybe an exciting courtroom moment from the 2000s was Robert Blake, Beretta, and the cameras in the courtroom when he was found not guilty.
That was this decade?
I'm pretty sure that was like 2000 or 2001.
My mind is going then, because I thought for sure that was back with O.J.
Yeah, that was
he's just been walking around ever since, right?
Yeah, not guilty. So he was done right then and there. You can go home now.
Well,
like O.J. the first time.
I'm going to give you a little spy report.
Spy report.
That fucker did it. I saw I don't give a shit how innocent they found him.
Yeah, the crime may have happened in the 90s, but that live TV shot of him being found not guilty.
You know what? Just now as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I got it. The Michael Jackson trial for kid touching had the helicopters in the air, had the ranch, had the weirdness. Remember where he would show up all fucked up in his pajamas and a guy having an umbrella over his head?
That was great. Yeah. That was sensational.
Let me throw out this one, too. Martha Stewart getting convicted.
That was pretty good.
That was this decade, too?
That was this decade.
Now, did that trial take place on TV?
No, that one they had just those artist renderings.
See, most of I think it was why a lot of these didn't get as big as OJ, because obviously with the OJ thing, every single second was shown on TV. One thing that comes to mind was, remember the showboating judge of like Anna Nicole, her custody deal after she died, and then you had that big, showboating judge who was like from the Bronx, remember?
Right, and he started crying.
He would cry every single
that was
day.
a gigantic trial.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so I fucked up here. There's plenty of stuff out there.
But they
that
weren't
doesn't
as
show you
big.
the 15 minutes fame of these kind of people.
Yeah.
The Anna Nicole stuff, and we'll have to get in that in Scandal,
was
gigantic, yet as soon as it's done, you don't think about it. It's fucking
over.
cotton candy.
There was also Scott Peterson, even though he wasn't a celebrity. That was followed by the whole country.
Trial.
Yeah.
And everybody had opinions on it, and seems longer ago than this decade.
It really does.
I mean, if you bring up Scott Peterson, and again, for some reason, when one of these things happen, your friends make sure you have to hear that person's name constantly. And, what do you mean you don't have an opinion? This fucking guy's an asshole. Like he's all like crazy about it. And then once it's gone, nobody cares.
Yep.
I wonder if Scott Peterson feels the same way. Boy, this feels like I killed her in the 90s. I've been in here so long.
Quite frankly, I don't know much about the man. And I guess if you're really talking news, can we ever stop thinking about Katrina? I mean, that's one that you still hear almost on a daily basis. We never mopped up the Katrina. We never took care of the Katrina.
That's one of the heavyweights. That's one of the Titanics of the 2000s, for sure. And that was, I mean, that was one of those ones that you were so enraged at. Why can't these people get some help? It was mind-boggling.
Well, what I'll always remember this is how quickly people were blaming the people that got hit in the storm. And remember, they would show the guy with the fucking Heineken bottles and all, and everybody, something should be done about these thieves. This motherfucker is up to his ass in dirty water. No one is ever going to drink that Heineken. There's no big screen TVs that are fucking worthy. Stop focusing on that, you fucking maniacs.
Yeah. It was an extremely divisive news story. I remember, well, because I remember that people, when I was working at Westwood One Traffic and News, and a lot of the people, all of the sports and traffic people give updates in the same studio, and they would come out, and if you were liberal-leaning, you were so pissed at PETA and Bush. And if you
I don't understand why you'd be mad at the people's ethical treatment of animals.
Oh, I mean, the other thing, whatever, that group, I forget the group, but the people who were supposed to help got crushed.
Who's he talking about?
He's talking about FEMA.
Oh, okay.
FEMA, okay, whatever. All right, I'm not great with abbreviations. And these people would come out and they would scream at FEMA and scream at Bush, and then the people who you could tell were Republicans would say, well, why didn't they leave? They got the weather reports. Hey, I get a 5-day weather report every time on my computer. And this would go on.
Besides the people up on the roofs just crying for help, when they finally took cameras inside the Superdome and just showed that filthy mess that they
the bodies,
that they expected people to live in, and they had no food in there and no toilets.
Well, this was always remember this story for one reason. This was my real disconnected time. I was just moving back to New York, no hookup yet, did not have cable, so didn't have the computer, didn't have my satellite radio. Literally we're moving stuff. And I'm walking down, and the first thing I see is that it missed New Orleans. It was on one of the newspapers. So I remember even saying at the time, they constantly give you this, like it's going to hit a city, and it never does. It's all about fear. 24 hours, I'm just loading up a thing, and then the next day I see the pictures on the paper. I still wasn't hooked up with a cable, still didn't have my computer.
Wow.
And it was my last really disconnected from the world moment.
That's crazy. So what did you do during it? I mean, did you go out to like a friend's house to watch the coverage?
I was just working the whole time, and then read about it in the paper the next day, and I was just baffled that this crazy thing, and it made me feel like I was in the 1860s.
Right.
That this crazy thing had happened, and I had completely mixed it.
Well, along the lines of Katrina, the tsunami hitting Sri Lanka.
Not an American story, Fez. Not a lot of interest for us.
No.
Bigger than Katrina. Gigantic, frightening story. And that one was... I mean, when you obviously it didn't take place in our country, but even when you start to read those kind of numbers, it's almost like your mind won't even make those pictures. It's too big to imagine.
Over 200,000 dead.
Jesus.
From a wave coming in.
God damn.
Don't I get to you, big guy? You're still in a year around.
What did those poor people do to deserve a tsunami?
You think there's some kind of fairness in nature? You think that storms hit the bad people?
Throwing it out there.
But you honestly think that you do something wrong so a big wave comes?
Sometimes.
Easier to think that way?
I said sometimes.
I mean, it's caveman thinking.
Who knows? I'm going to go investigate.
I don't like and we do this all the time, it's almost like a blame the victim type of thinking that takes place.
Right.
As if disease or violence or nature just attacks deserving people.
That's what all our evangelists tried to put out there with Katrina and everything else.
It would be great if that did happen, so that when someone like stole a purse and was running away, they'd get hit by lightning or have a heart attack.
That would be fun. I wish that could happen. Something that was, I think, very, very big for a while was the Virginia Tech situation where the guy just, I mean, it's weird.
Shooting.
It was bigger than, or more bodies. I don't want to say bigger, but there were more people killed in that than in Columbine. I don't think it had the same heat as Columbine because Columbine feels like the original.
Well, what was interesting for that from a news point of view is how quickly the news knows how to work a story like that.
Yeah.
They're no longer shocked. Every anchor flies there. They set up a thing. They immediately go through Facebook, looking through people. Oh, I was in a class with them. And there's becomes this beginning, middle, and end. It's no longer just a shock. They realize they have the couple days of what happened here, who are the families, the next couple days of the vigils and, the funerals, and then the kind of blame game sets in. How did we not know? It's mathematical how they start to put these things together now.
And then the very ending is the Yankees play Virginia Tech in baseball for some strange reason.
Because that makes everyone feel better.
I didn't get the connection necessarily. It was a nice thing to do, but I didn't,
And they stomped them.
Crushed them. I'm glad about that.
How's that going to lift everybody? Well, we lost 33-6 against the Yankees.
They didn't even get 6.
Well, didn't they eventually put in farmhands as they used to go?
This may be going back to court cases.
Go way back.
But starting the decade with Bush versus Gore in the Supreme Court of the United States.
Yeah, that was, yeah. I mean, we didn't even touch on the presidential elections. Now that's 3, obviously, gigantic news stories. 2000 was first, of course, and that was huge. Chad, I never heard of Chad before or since.
That was the big dividing point, I think, as a nation, where we started to all get the us against them. You know what I mean? Where whatever side, and you brought this up before too, Dave, about the right wing seeing something, the left wing seeing something, but I don't think we've ever recovered from the Gore versus Bush 2000 thing.
No.
Where it never seemed like Bush had total acceptance as a president, and obviously Obama doesn't either.
Well, if they don't get rid of the Electoral College soon, all Americans should protest.
Well, I mean, I know they always color-coded the map in presidential elections, but that's really the first time I remember hearing red states and blue states. where it was almost like, here's a divider of people, not just what colors we chose for the map.
I'm trying to think if they did that before. I mean, we've always known that we've had liberal or more liberal parts of the country and more conservative parts of the country, but did we ever use well, that's a blue state, that's a red state?
I don't think so. I think we noticed it with Clinton Dole because it was like it followed almost the exact same map as Bush Clinton.
Yeah, but in a lot of ways, like with Clinton Dole, he pulled some southern states.
Right.
And Obama pulled some southern states. But with Bush and his 2 elections, it stayed very much the South is conservative, Northeast and West Coast are liberal, and then you have just a couple states to fight over, the Ohios or whatever.
And I think that's why the terminology did. I think it might have started in the 2000s of red state, blue state.
Yeah, when Fez brought that up, I tried to think back in my mind if I remembered that from the 90s and can't recall really one way or another. But I do think, and we haven't gotten out of it yet, you're with us or you're with them. And when you hear a friend start to go in a different direction of a couple hot button things between the 2 things, it kind of starts and changes the way you think about that person.
Yeah. Without question.
Particularly, guns, healthcare, all that kind of shit, abortion, prayer in school. There's only like a couple things that are really, really hot button, but how you lined up on that is how you'll vote for everything else.
Right.
Talking about the biggest news stories of the past decade. What about for you, Chris Stanley? You've been very quiet over there today.
I think one of the bigger ones that just flared back up again, pretty much right at the end, is climate change debate. Inconvenient truth, and now that in the last 2 weeks there's been that huge scandal saying that maybe scientists have been fudging the numbers or whatever, within the stolen emails.
It's kind of interesting how with so many stories right now, you're getting so many odds, so many opinions coming from so many directions that it's almost harder to make an opinion of your own. You have stuff like global warming, and now you're just getting reports from every single way. What is true, what isn't true, who's getting money by saying that's true, and it's just clouding almost every issue. The healthcare issue. I don't think if you were a healthcare professional, you could follow this shit. And I said from the beginning, I really don't get it. I'm hearing them yell about this option and that option and what's going to happen. It's really hard from the outside to see what is good and what isn't.
Right. Yeah, to me though, I don't see how global warming has become so politicized. I just don't. It should be a science thing, and it seems like if you believe in global warming, you're a Democrat, and if you're against global warming, if you don't believe in it, you're a Republican.
Right.
It's just very bizarre.
It's happened that way, and that's what I'm saying. One of those issues where I'm against abortion, and I'm for using up all the earth as we want to.
This is global warming we're talking about. It's a science thing. And I believe in it.
You believe in it?
Absolutely.
Hicks?
I believe in it.
It was hot 2 weeks ago. It was 60 degrees in New York.
But it's cold as hell outside. One doesn't mean anything.
But it was 60 for a week.
Guess what? We cured global warming. It's done. Walk out there today in a T-shirt.
Hooray!
Yeah, we have to. We're fucking up the planet. We're pumping fucking chemicals into fucking. There weren't any chemicals that aren't safe for fucking humans or animals.
Fez, what about for you?
I believe in global warming. I think it's happening. I think you just see the lack of ice, the ice that's melting at the poles.
Yeah, but that may not have anything to do with us. That may be just a natural way that the world works.
But I mean, even if it's not us, it's still getting warmer, and we need to do something to try to combat it.
Well, what would we do if it's not something that we can handle? What were we going to do? Have giant fucking air conditioners?
But think about how many times, just as a kid, I went ice skating. Like, I lived on a lake. And the lake would freeze every single year, and you go ice skating for a month.
But I want you to understand something. That is not the way scientific research works. I remember once a year we skated.
Every year, though, I ice skated.
But you don't have... Your memories are trapped into this or that. But there were warm winters back then. There were warm winters in the 1700s and the 1800s.
Right, but I'm saying, like, I remember getting a new pair of ice skates every Christmas and then putting them to use. My mom hasn't bought me ice skates in 10 years.
All right, global warming. I don't know even if I would call it the big story because it hasn't even come one way or the other.
How about the recession, then? I know that's kind of the last, 2 years, I would say, starting in 2008.
Devastating.
But that's a huge, huge story.
We still don't know whether Bush and then Obama have done the right things with the bailout money.
Right.
Still too early to tell. I saw some figures the other day that said that Detroit is at 50% unemployment. 50!
Holy cow!
% unemployment.
That's why the Pontiac Silverdome sold for $500,000.
That story I still don't even understand. It's like you could buy that and just break it up.
So, $55 million to build.
Imagine if you bought it. If you had there's plenty of people. My dad could probably afford to buy it and just live there.
What would even you couldn't get a decent house in North Jersey for what they're asking for that building.
So weird.
And I would like to see somebody like Elton John just have it.
If I had that cash, I would have bought it. Imagine the football games you would have.
Yeah, last couple of years with the money situation has been bizarre, beyond bizarre. But if we're doing the big stories, I don't think that you can get past the story of the decade, September 11th, 2001. New York City, Washington, D.C., and that field in Pennsylvania. The story of when life was one way before the news story and another way after the news story. Anything? Does anybody have a problem with that being the number one story?
Absolutely not.
No, you can't. There's nothing that comes close. I mean, it started two wars, which in and of themselves are gigantic news stories.
And neither one of them is going away. Both those wars are still going on.
But it all goes back. Everything, all the big players involved, who we'll talk about, it all probably starts with 9/11.
One of those wars going on for 8 years now. The other one, I think, going into its 6th.
Yeah.
Well, which is the 8 years? Afghanistan?
Afghanistan.
So we went into Afghanistan just about immediately.
I think it was October of 2001.
October.
Yeah, and Iraq was since 2003.
I think 2003 we went in.
Jesus.
In
March.
And that build-up was all about 9/11. And remember how crazy we were going into Iraq, like the country being just totally freaked out and let's get it. Which goes to show we spent the early part of the decade fairly in shock, either in complete shock or some kind of shock about what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's no what else to describe it. I mean, for months and months and months, if you turned on radio, I mean, you guys were there. Radio didn't even have commercials for a long time, just regular talk shows.
Commercial free.
It was commercial free.
Yep.
I mean, terrible event, but it was just so odd. Like, what kind of planet do we live on?
And the TV talk shows had to take time off.
What do you mean?
Well, like, I think Leno was gone for 2 weeks.
Oh, okay, those kind of talk shows, the comedy shows.
Letterman, yep, he did the crying thing.
Well, I mean, everything became 24-hour news.
Yeah. Every
station was a 24-hour news station. And then when it wasn't, it seemed almost a little, you really need your silly show, son? Should we really be sitting around watching this stuff right now? Took a while to get over that. And now it's odd to see that life kind of has moved away from it. It's almost hard to, even as we sit here, recall those feelings. they're definitely a distant echo to all the things that we were feeling and talking about.
Well, airports feel normal again, even with the huge search and take off your shoes, and no one can meet you at the gate with a bouquet of flowers anymore for Grandma. You know, but it now feels normal to have to go through this routine.
It's so bizarre when you think about even the airports that you get into the thing of, I can't come in and I can't sit in the car out front.
Right.
I'm going to go stay at a parking lot and wait to get the call that you're off the plane and have got your bag and have walked out, and then I'll pay money, drive around once, and hopefully hit you on that time. I mean, it's impossible right now to pick someone up at the airport. You just have to tell people, just get a car. Just get a car.
And it's not going back. It'll never go back to the way it was.
9/11, the news story itself and the way the country handled it, scale of 1 to 10, how did we do? Fez Watley.
Oh, I think we were... Wow, I'm going to say a 6.
Really? What are you taking off points for?
For the war in Iraq. And that.
What do you mean for the war in Iraq?
Because it was sold on 9/11 fear, and if we don't fight them there, we'll have to fight them here.
And you just don't believe that now?
No, and weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist, and Colin Powell at the UN during this past decade. And I think there was a lot of great...
Well, what do you mean? You got to be definitive about it.
Yeah, of just showing evidence that wasn't real, that just wasn't true.
Well,
and basically, I mean, I don't know whether he was in on it or not, but just lying to the world.
You think that Colin Powell may have known there were no weapons of mass destruction?
I think so.
You think George Bush knew there was no weapons of mass destruction?
Absolutely.
Dick Cheney all the way down the road?
Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld, they all knew.
So you take off 4 points.
Right.
For that. Let me go over you, Dave. What do you give a scale?
I'd say a 9. I thought America actually did band together quite well after 9/11. A spirit of camaraderie, I thought, kind of helped a lot of people go through those tough times. I thought people were reaching out, being friendlier. I wish that people were like that all the time. I mean, by 2002. That sentiment kind of went away. It was like, okay, now it's, I mean, Fez is right in terms of now it's just like, okay, well, let's go to war, let's kick ass. But I don't think we should have looked outside so quickly. I mean, obviously we had to go after bin Laden, but we didn't need to look outside so fast. We could have concentrated on helping each other a little longer. I
never would have dreamed we would have gotten through this decade without getting bin Laden.
I agree with you there 100%. And the one thing that I'm kind of, and I'm not as hardcore about it as Fez is, and probably not as up as Dave is, but I think that the thing that kind of feels like a missed opportunity is the nation went from fear and even depression, like spiritual depression, but that when it got back to normal, it was more like apathy. Mm-hmm. It never was, now we want to think more, now we want to, do better, look into stuff. It just almost felt like we slid back into apathy and the constant red versus blue stuff.
Right.
Where people don't seem to be able to allow people to make the other points. And, even Fez accusing those men of lying. Not being mistaken, but literally lying to us. That's just another example of we're still seeing things black and white, which makes it kind of saying it, red and blue. Mm-hmm. Hicks, how did we do? 1 to 10.
2. There's still a fucking hole down there. We haven't barely rebuilt the fucking buildings yet. It was a clusterfuck, the entire thing, from beginning to end.
And once again, it became about money, and it became about greed and jealousy and pettiness. Some of the stuff that we still are in this country.
Why would at that point? Why would bureaucracy matter when trying to just rebuild the fucking towers or whatever, the tower, whatever the plan was, or just even getting a plan together and going with it and saying, fuck it, let's do it.
And I'm used to those kinds of people having those kind of jobs, real estate and government, being assholes. But the thing that's going to lower me from Dave's numbers closer to Fez's is where are the people to say the same thing that Hicks is saying right now, that this is just fucking unacceptable. It's unacceptable that things aren't made better. And I think if you're a Bush person, if you're a Republican, you wait for the Republicans to take care of it. The liberals, who are just leaving Obama out there by himself after getting him elected, it just seems like people aren't as involved in the day-to-day running of the country that it isn't even a matter that if they should be, they're capable of being. People are capable of getting involved. So, you guys had 9/11 as the big story.
Yep.
I'm still hung up with the Red Sox coming back against the Yankees. I don't think it gets any bigger than that.
That was huge.
That was 9/11. I call that 9/11-2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The sequel, huh?
Didn't see it coming.
Felt like that around New York. I know Earl went into the same 9/11 pressure. When we come back, among other things, we'll look at who was the big newsmaker of this decade. It's the Ron and Fez Show.
Maybe you'd like to get smacked in the face with my big cock. Don't fuck around with Wadley. Maybe you'd like to get smacked in the face with my big cock. He'll hit you with his ding-a-ling. Maybe you'd like to get smacked in the face with my big cock. He'll rub his smelly junk in your face. Maybe you'd like to get smacked in the face with my big cock. Don't fuck around with Fez. He'll whip out his dick, and he'll bitch slap you with that dick until you cry. So just mind your P's and Q's right now. Oh, it's happening, it says meltdown. You picked the wrong day to go to the ball, Cinderella. Cause I'll tell you what, I'll jack you off until you come. That's what I'll end up doing to you, buddy. He'll jerk you up, he'll make you come. You'll wish you never fucked around with Wadley. He'll jerk you off, he'll make you come. He'll make you wish that you never fucked around with Wadley. Cause I'll tell you what, I'll jack you off until you come. That's what I'll end up doing to you, buddy. Don't fuck with Fez. Don't fuck with Fez. Don't fuck with Fez. Don't fuck with Fezzy. Don't fuck with Fez. Don't fuck with Wadley. Don't fuck with Fez. Don't fuck with Fez. Don't fuck with Wadley. Don't fuck with Fez. Don't fuck with Fez.
The Virus. Sirius 197, XM 202. Ron and Fez.
Ron and Fez Show, wrapping up the decade a year early, apparently. This hour we're talking about newsmakers of the decade. And this kind of seems like if you're going for a number one, it seems like it should be cut and dry to me, but I'll let Chris Stanley start us off. Who was the big newsmaker?
Without a doubt, it has to be George Bush.
George Bush.
For 8 years as President of the United States of America. There's no one else that was in the news desk this much.
George Bush took the praise. George Bush took the heat. It was his decade. Anybody disagreeing with that?
I'm going to disagree slightly. Okay, because Saddam...
You think it was his brother?
I think Saddam Hussein was such a huge part of the war in Iraq, and then also we're forgetting when Saddam Hussein, we captured him, he got put to death, all in front of our eyes. You know, when we saw the Saddam Hussein getting hung thing, that was crazy stuff. I think he actually could be the newsmaker of the 2000s. For those reasons.
I think he was just kind of one of the foes that Hulk Hogan had to beat. But, you know what I mean? He was the Iron Sheik or whatever, but he wasn't a Hulk Hogan. Fezzy, you're going along with the George Bush?
You know what? I'm going to go slightly off, too.
Wow, this surprises me.
Because I think...
And I'm wondering how you guys see this as slightly. To go from Bush to Saddam Hussein seems a lot further than slight, but I know you guys view him differently.
I am going with Osama bin Laden. I don't think anyone's affected the world or this country more over the past 10 years of how we live and how we act and how our government reacts to things. I think, and the fact that he's been on the run and never got captured over the 10-year period, I think he's the guy who was the newsmaker. I'm
not even buying if it's real. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not even buying that he's still alive. I'm not buying that he's running anything out there in the hills. And newsmaker, when's the last time you saw this fucking asshole on the news? When's the last time you've heard a discussion in any public forum about him and how do we get him? I mean, that, if anything, that takes me back to the apathy. I would have liked to seen whatever anger we had going after that guy at whatever fucking price. I don't want to, you know, that was the guy that we knew did it. That was the guy we needed to fucking get. And Obama brought him up during the election and not a day since.
No.
So he's no better than George Bush in terms of getting this guy.
He's been disappointing.
And then you don't even hear rumors about him. You don't hear shit about him.
He's been disappointing in that regard. You know, I mean, Obama is, I mean, bin Laden, that's the only reason to have gone to 2 wars, as Fez said.
Well, we actually didn't have either war to go after him. Neither war was to get him. It was all for, you know, different fucking strategic purposes. But we never did we got to go get that guy at all costs. Nobody pulling for Barack Obama, our first African-American president.
Not yet.
Give him time.
We'll see.
Next decade says?
Well, I mean, we're going to see in 2012 what happens. Because there's a sneaking feeling on my part.
You know what happens in the Aztec calendar.
Well, yeah, I don't trust what Indians say necessarily. But I think Obama is heading for a one and done if he doesn't turn the ship around. I mean, he's got to really change a lot of shit going on. A year's gone by.
He had a rough first year. I don't think even his...
We only got 3 more.
Even his biggest fans could say what a decent first year he had. His approval ratings stink, and all his allies are running for the hills. And this is the time that supposedly the Republican Party is fractured. We almost have 2 fractured parties right now. We're in a fucking mess.
They should just split then and have 4 parties.
I want to split, but I think it makes more sense to split this country up into parts of it that we'd have a better chance of governing. It just doesn't seem like we all want to be in this whole thing together.
Well, we could do like true blue Christians and then everyone else. Like real devout Christians and everyone else. And I think the country would be split fine if we did that. We'll flip a coin, draw a line down the middle. Someone's on the left, someone's on the right.
Why don't we call the Christian part New Israel? So we can get that out there, and we can say that's been the promised land.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm going to go on the non-devout Christians. I'm still a Christian, but I'm not going to be able to bitch about stuff.
Am I wrong here, though, that if you're on the left or if you're on the right, you're unhappy in this country?
Yeah.
If I'm just going by people I talk to, they're unhappy. And when I was down seeing my family, my folks, and some brother-in-laws and stuff, Obama came up on the screen, and they're just like, oh, my God, Jesus Christ, I hate looking at him. They didn't just go, well, I didn't vote for him, and he's my president. They literally hate to see him on TV. And I'm like, really? He just started. Oh, God, no. It's the biggest liar. We're all living in a certain amount of hate. I'll take it back to that red and blue thing where I said earlier about people inside our own, and maybe we should start wearing red suits and blue suits, depending on how you vote.
I love the color blue, so I'm lucky.
But you have the red hair.
Oh, shit.
Well, I don't know how you could look at this decade and not agree once again with Pepper Hicks, the man who's been dominating, that it was George Bush's decade, good, bad, and ugly. And the only thing that I will say, the weirdest thing for me, is to see how softly he left office. To see him leaving with the power structure already down, to see him leaving not with a big parade, but just kind of slipping off. It seemed very strange to me.
I think Katrina was the last thing to do him in.
People in the country were pissed.
Yeah.
That that didn't get taken care of faster.
I mean, I know the economy tanked, but I think Katrina is where it's like, he's not going to have another good day the rest of his term.
Well, and then they didn't even know it then. Just like I was moving, Bush was on vacation then, so they weren't kind of following the story enough. And I remember this. Who was his right-hand girl that was always...
Condi Rice?
Condi Rice was in New York then, and it was a couple days later, and it started to show on TV. Because remember, it took Bush a long time to show up in New Orleans?
3 days.
And people started getting furious around the country. Where's the federal government? Where's the help? Now, whether the federal government should have went in and out has more to do with your political leanings as well. But when there's a fire, the American people would like to see fire trucks. And Condi Rice was here in New York and went to a musical during all the shit that was happening. And she walked into, I believe it was Wicked, and all the people started booing her. So it's like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Why are you watching a play? And I made one of the newspapers, because I never saw the story. I told you, I've only been able to read these things.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Like, regular people were saying, leave this play and go fix them. Help those people. And she's like, what? Huh? What's going on? I've been on vacation. Never got a call from my boss. Everything seemed fine. But it was his decade, Fez. He was a Shakespearean character throughout that decade. And people were either on his side, were rooting for him, and believed that, he had the God connection, and he was a cowboy, and he didn't think, he felt. He's a lot to do with the way that the country treats themselves. And like I said, after 9/11, people did not want to get intellectual about it. They did not want to sit back and think. They felt something. Those feelings were strong, so they must be true, and off we act.
I think it was just weird that he ended up his term, his part of the decade there, with shoes being thrown at him. I mean, it just seems absolutely... You can't get much lower than that, than having someone's moccasin thrown at you.
But it wasn't by an American. I mean, we weren't throwing shoes at him here. That was that one weird thing over in Iraq.
That was great.
It was so nuts.
You know what?
He was just ducking.
I'm going to tell you the truth. I've never was a fan of President Bush's, and I was fucking furious that somebody threw a shoe at him. I cannot stand it when people want to try to humiliate. Again, it's not being an intellectual. It's being a fucking animal. And chucking that shoe at him, and then suddenly it becomes fucking funny to the people on TV. I'm like, they just threw a fucking shoe at your president. I was pissed at the Secret Service for not fucking being on that guy in a heartbeat.
They're crazy about the shoes over there, aren't they?
I don't understand what they do with anything, Dave.
When Sodom was down, they took their shoes off and hit him with it.
Dave, it's a little after 4. There's free champagne and free, looks like hors d'oeuvres around the corner.
I can't wait.
So I'm going to send you all the way down. News stories, Fezzi, is there anything we're missing you need to get out in the last couple minutes here?
I think really the only other thing was, oh my gosh, after over 25 years, we got a new pope this decade.
Oh, that's right, Pope Benedict.
No big deal. It seems almost like whatever the heat that the last pope has, this pope doesn't have.
Yeah.
I saw him in New York, and it was very interesting. Only saw Mexican Americans or Mexicans lining the route for him.
Wow.
You didn't see the Polish people. You didn't see the Irish people. You didn't see the Italian people. If the Catholic Church ever loses the Hispanics, they're fucked. They will blow it and lose it completely.
Let priests marry, for Christ's sake.
But I remember when the Pope came to this country before, all the ethnic groups showed up for him.
Yeah.
All the ethnic groups. And this time, just the Mexicans. All right, guys, we do got to wrap this up. Dave, is there anything you didn't get out that you needed to say?
No, that was it. We did a fantastic job summarizing.
Interesting that you would grade us as highly as you did the country after 9/11. Hicks, anything else you got to get involved in?
No, we did a beautiful job today. Fucking great.
Repeat what I said. Well, I'm glad there's champagne chilling.
Let's go celebrate, boys.
Me and Pepper are already cheersing ourselves.
It's on SiriusXM. Let's just shut this thing down. Go get ourselves... enjoy the best of the Ron and Fez show. Due up here next. And everybody, please enjoy your holidays. And as we talk about 2009, just enjoy and get ready for your 2010.
Ronnie B, Fezzy W, Ron and Ed, Sirius 197, XM 202, The Virus.
Ron and Fez here.
And we're from the Ron and Fez Show. And welcome to the world of SiriusXM satellite radio.
And there's no better way of celebrating the birth of our Lord and Savior than with over 130 channels of radio programming.
I think that baby Jesus would have liked that.
Sure as hell beats myrrh.
Enjoy your new SiriusXM satellite radio and the best of the Ron and Fez Show.